Finding an activity to do with your child that challenges and pushes you both to be better, that builds character, and is something you can learn together is a fantastic thing.
At Okami Martial Arts and Fitness, we thrive on positive feedback from our students, so you can just imagine how happy we were to hear from Jessica and her daughters as they gave their thoughts about our classes.
Classes are always fun, and I always learn something new.
Fun and learning, all while getting out and getting active. That's one of our goals, and according to these amazing ladies, we're doing our job and doing it well.
I see the excitement and the joy that they have to go to class to learn and improve.
Contact us today to find out what everyone is talking about. Our family can't wait to meet your family.
Okami is my favorite place to be.
Okami Martial Arts and Fitness. Check us out at okamikai.com.
Everything is my favorite thing to do in class.
Welcome to the Okami Chronicles, a podcast devoted to not only the students at Okami Martial Arts and Fitness, but also to the fans of our school and maybe even other instructors who are curious about what's happening in our small area of the martial arts industry. I'm Scott Camsell, and I'm the chief instructor at Okami, which is located in Uxbridge, Ontario, Canada. In this episode, I speak with Hanshi Kevin Blok. Hanshi will be teaching our upcoming on-guard control and defensive tactics course happening here on February 8th and 9th. This is a comprehensive training course covering a variety of topics, including practical self-defense techniques, use of force continuum, hold reversals, blocks, checks, pressure point controls, stuns, and basic edged weapon defense. There's a strong focus on control of others for arrest and detainment. There's even a portion dedicated to handcuffing, but no martial arts or law enforcement experience is necessary to participate. Hanshi and I talk about what makes this course different from others like it, and we also talk about why anyone can benefit from on-guard training. Let's find out more with the founder and chief instructor of On Guard International, Hanshi Kevin Blok. We're excited that February 8th and 9th, we're going to be returning to teaching or being able to offer on-guard courses again at our dojo. Sir, I just wanted to welcome you back to Okami, and I'm glad you're going to be returning. What are your thoughts as far as the overall course? What would make this different from any other control and defensive tactics course?
Well, first, thank you for having me on, Scott Gian. I really appreciate your offer to kind of speak with you and do this as a public forum to speak about what we do. I mean, you and I both, but in particular, the on-guard course that I head or on-guard programs that I oversee, they include a wide range of martial aspects that are directly related to security and policing, but certainly can be usable for the average individual. And that's one of the things we try to do with the presentation of programs like this, is that they are sculpted for the clientele and the attendees themselves. So we try not to make it too cookie cutter. Well, this is the way it always is, and we present it in that way. Instead, there are so many aspects, so many modules that can be brought into this type of training that we want to highlight what it is that will be the most efficient and effective, and maybe the most enjoyable and useful for the attendees that come to the events. So we need to get an idea of who's coming and what reasons they may be there. For example, if it was a martial arts aspect, we'd focus a lot on the martial concepts of containment and control. If it's policing, we might add aspects like handcuffing, and certainly one of the overseeing aspects that is really important is the idea of the Canadian Criminal Code. What is the law? When you're putting your hands on an individual and you're doing interactions physically with an individual, there are certain rules and regulations, certainly in the Canadian Criminal Code, that tell you what things are appropriate and legal and what aren't, depending on your status. We're talking about a civilian, a trained individual, a police officer who has a authorization across a province or the country or whatever. And those things are certainly elemental aspects that I think define the program's approach in general. And then specifics, the techniques that we're using have to meet three particular standards. The first, that they need to be effective. Whatever it is that you're doing has to have the ability to actually work. And what is the measure? And that's a pretty wide open subjective aspect, because the idea is that it's effective most of the time by an average individual applying it on an average individual. There's always the idea that there's exceptions here and there. Get everything from the environment to the amount of people to backgrounds and training and age and liabilities when it comes to physical limitations and so on. We try to make something that or offer something that's going to be useful for the average individual working with the average individual. And we certainly deal with some exceptions occasionally, but that doesn't become our highlight. Instead, it's the general, I guess, level of the group and approach of the group. The second is that they meet a medical acceptability. So tactical acceptability has to work, and there's the medical acceptability. And I think that is one of the things that we try to emphasize strongly, because the concept here is that your focus is about containment and control as opposed to destruction of the other individuals. We're not looking at dislocating and breaking joints or bones or causing long-term injury or grievous bodily harm. Our focus is about how to contain and control the violence rather than add more violence to it to defeat. So this makes it much more a policeman's kind of art as opposed to the soldier art. The soldier art is seek out the threat, the enemy, destroy it. The policeman's art is mainly reduce the violence, contain it, control it, and in doing so, let it be the situation move into the system. So if your police or security would then be taken over by the legislative aspects. And then the final and third idea is that it needs to meet a legal acceptability. And that is the things that we're teaching. Is it legal in our country or in the country that I'm teaching? Is it legal in your state or province? Is it legal in your town? And is it legal within the agency? Because certain agencies have use of force models or other rules that they use to decide what it is they think is appropriate for their individuals to be involved with and what they can be authorized to do. So we have to make sure it meets that type of legal, quasi-legal, I guess, acceptability, and that keeps everybody on the same page and hopefully out of court and doing the right things.
You're a high-level martial artist and instructor. How did you get involved with doing this?
Well, my real focus in the early days was just pure martial arts, starting with judo for a few years and then into karate. I went to the Orient, did a 6-month instructor's program in China with Kung Fu, eventually into Aikido. I have a love of all martial arts, empty hands as well as weapons martial arts. But it started with actually one of my students, a student who was moving towards her black belt, who eventually became hired as a RCMP officer. And she ended up doing some undercover work, and she was doing some special training at the Canadian Police College in Ottawa with the RCMP. And they were teaching her some rolls or break falls, some locking techniques, joint lock techniques. And she was substantially better than the instructors, according to her and according to the instructors. So they asked her if she would be interested in becoming an instructor at the college. And she said, no, I like being a police officer, working in the field and undercover. And I always thank her. Annette, thank you very much, Laporte, for doing this, because what she did was she basically told them, who you want is the person who trained me, not me. So she recommended me. They contacted me, asked me to do a review of their program at the Canadian Police College. I did. I went up and spent a couple of days, gave my advice, and they took it and we ran with it. They were very happy with what happened. And we ended up setting up a program mainly for police safety, officer safety training, but its focus was with undercover officers who sometimes have spent months or even years undercover and don't want to blow their cover. They want to keep it active and moving forwards. So they need to be able to talk their way out of situations. They need to simple ways to deal with physical tactics that are rather minimal in the way that it will cause damage or injury to other people. And the containment and control aspect became more and more critical so that they could maintain their role as an undercover officer. But it began to expand. Other officers said, well, I would just need that for just general street work. And then slowly I started getting more interest from non-policing groups, security groups. The military, Canadian military was involved with a few things. And then that began to expand into, well, what about, let's say, a teacher who's dealing with unruly students in school? Or nursing, you have to handle patients who become difficult to deal with, whether it's pediatric patients like children, like geriatric patients, elderly adults with dementia, or psychiatric patients. How can we actually benevolently control an individual like this, keeping ourselves safe as well as the subject safe, and doing things that help us to keep our job and move our, medical aspects forwards. And so it began to widen out, and there were more and more opportunities to work with individuals who deal with individuals in crisis and conflict and having to deal with violence in the world around us. And I find that since COVID in particular, there seems to have been, certainly in our culture, the Western culture in particular, but Canada and the US, a greater intolerance to things that are uncomfortable or difficult. People seem to have a lot more patience and tolerance, etiquette when it came to things prior to COVID. But I think a couple of years of the problems with lockdowns and masks and distancing had made people very much more anxious, I think stressed. And in doing so, I've seen an increase, certainly in my business, in doing this type of training because of the companies and organizations that have been dealing with this on a bigger, more expanded basis, I suppose. So more and more opportunities are opening up, and we're looking to deal with that the best way we can.
With you dealing with so many different careers, like teachers, you mentioned police, security, is there some common themes that you can see maybe might be weaknesses within their own training?
Well, I think one of the things about self-defense training or on guard type of programs, which are common across the board when it comes to use of force training, is that people have limited time to get involved in this, limited budgets. They would like to have people at very high levels and capabilities, but they often don't seem to want or have the capabilities to pay for it and spend the time to do it. I mean, as a martial artist yourself, you teach someone a particular movement, and then they try it for a few times, and then they don't do it again for 7, 8 months, and then something happens, and now they're going to try to remember what they did 5 or 6 times 7 or 8 months ago. Its capability, advantage, or effectiveness is going to be rather small and diminished. So the key for me has been to do very simple things, multiple repetitions, but with a number of kind of intellectual means and pedagogical teaching approach means that allow that individual to be able to recall that information under high stress. And the techniques are extremely simple. They have no more than 3 components in the movements, mainly because it's just too easy. People do great techniques, but it's 8, 9, 10 movements, and you get them out of order, doesn't work anymore. And again, if you're not practicing on a regular basis all the time, very difficult. It's kind of like a musician who is learning how to play something. And if you can play 3 chords on a guitar, you can play a lot of songs, but you're probably not going to be cutting albums and having huge stadiums filled with your fans, particularly when you've only took 1 day of courses and then don't practice it very much. You got to get out there and do lots of it. And depending on where you want to go.
You just burst my bubble. You just totally burst my bubble.
Yeah, I learned that a long time ago. My bubble was burst a long time ago. Practice, practice, practice. Yes, that does help. Yeah.
Over the years, just for me doing my own courses, I've met a fair amount of individuals that have come back with anecdotes and stories, but when they've used certain techniques that we've taught them, you've obviously had a lot more exposure with people and training them. What are some of, or if not the favorite story that you have that you would tell others as far as something that's gone on since you trained them?
Probably the ones that I'm drawn to the most, the ones that endear me the most, or that I'm endeared to, are the ones where people use the least amount of violence or physical force to control a situation. I think in so many situations, individuals have this idea that just becoming bigger, faster, more brutal, more physically capable when it came to martial arts is all you need. And unfortunately, that is not the case at all. In our very litigious world, even when you seem to have done the perfect thing from your point of view, or even within the agency organization you're working with, there'll continually be and constantly be outside elements, forces, and individuals who will see this as nowhere near the positive situation that you do. And the ripples that come out of that, whether it's litigation, court cases, or just pressure being put by other individuals, the media, those things can be extremely, I guess, off-balancing when it comes to these types of things, because you feel you're doing what you think is appropriate. And I find that the individuals who have done the most in moving this element of true harmony in the world, we're using a martial technique to make things actually better, not just being able to strong enough and powerful enough to take down another person, where the environment, the individuals involved, the situation, all are improved on some level, or all move in a better place because of what you've done. That is often the simplest little things, where an individual, someone comes up to them and they're screaming, you eyeballing me, you're looking at my wife or my girlfriend, and the person has the presence of mind to realize to distract that individual and keep things on that verbal place where they'll say, she looks like this girl that I went to school with. Is her name Marie? Did she go to, St. James High School? It's an old Catholic high school. And all of a sudden the guy's like, Well, no, she's not. Well, I'm sorry. She just looks so much like a person that I had a crush on a long time ago. Something as simple as that, or like, wow, that's the greatest looking pair of sunglasses I've ever seen. Where did you get them? And also that individual just changes immediately, particularly when you're saying something complimentary. And I find that these are kind of verbal martial principles. Aikido principle, for example, is one of pivoting, turning, deflecting energy as opposed to trying to block or stop it. Whereas the approach that we're using, Aikido-like approach, is let their energy come, but add yours to it in a way that redirects it in another place. And in doing so, takes them out of balance, whether it's a physical balance or for control. It could be a mental or psychological balance to get them out of that stream of anger, or aggression, or stress, or whatever it is that you have to deal with, and moving it to a better place. So getting a dialogue going, interacting with an individual where they see the benefits of working with you, whatever the situation you've set up or how you're directing that situation. These become the most critical aspects of on-guard training, and the individuals who I find that are the most effective do the least amount of physical tactics. They spend most of their time prepared and capable to do those things, but are able to usually physically respond in ways that are non-verbal, but also non-threatening. So you're very relaxed when you're talking to an individual. That takes training as well, of course. The things that you say don't make the situation worse, because the average individual in a conflict situation without training has a tendency to solve as many problems as they create, maybe, if they're focused. But the problem is they create as many problems as they solve. So getting off that idea of, I guess, contest, that when you're involved in some type of interaction with an individual who's in conflict or crisis, and that's what we need our defensive tactics programs for, we want to get that individual to be moving in a direction that's better for everyone, not just defeating them in some way, but getting them to see the positives in what's happening. And that's the real power. That's where you get that individual to be less likely to see you as an enemy, more as an ally in their problems because of the things that you've said and done. And in doing so, you get to, I guess, manipulate and control the situation to a much more positive, harmonious outcome in general.
We're hoping a lot of martial artists are going to be listening to this. And so is there something that you can sort of isolate down as far as a reason why a regular training martial artist would want to take a control and defensive tactics course?
Well, I think certainly the kind of courses that we offer, they will have a strong martial base, so that if you do have a martial background, you'll recognize that the techniques that we're using are, for the most part, they're effective by the average individual on most average individuals most of the time. And with the background that you may have, this is not something that we're trying to replace the material that you already know, but enhance it. We look at individuals who already have some background and try to hone what they're doing by adding information, building on what they're doing, as opposed to, well, that's wrong, that's not right, throw that out, and giving them a few more tools. Martial arts general approach is the soldier approach. You see a threat, you destroy that threat. The on-guard approach, using a more from Aikido-based aspect, is contain and control it. In doing so, I think there's a wider scope, and this is more positive for all individuals, but particularly for a martial artist who already understands the value of having the physical capabilities of containing and controlling yourself, but adding to that psychological, emotional, verbal aspects that are also just as powerful, maybe more powerful than a physical tactic, and enhancing your physical skills with that. Always having that physical kind of insurance. We have car insurance, we have house insurance, in case for a fire. We buy it. We don't hope that those things will happen, but we have it and we're prepared for that. And I think that's wise. But we get into minor altercations a lot, and learning how to use our skills in very much smaller, minute ways to move a general situation into a better place, I think it's just good life skills, but particularly advantageous to the person who already understands the advantage of martial skills.
Okay, let's swing the pendulum all the way to the other side. Is there any reason why somebody who wasn't a martial artist would feel intimidated to do a course like this?
Well, certainly there'd be reasons why they might feel intimidated, but the on-guard approach is one where we, again, try to sculpt the delivery of the system to the clientele and the attendees in the programs. Sometimes we'll have a company that says, here's what we want covered. Here's the curriculum that we would like delivered. Okay, that's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. If it's a little more generic, a little more open, where individuals are signing up on a per person basis, Now, we always have multiple instructors, no matter what type of program we offer. And the multiple instructor approach is that we need to deal sometimes with very unique situations with individuals. We try to have at least one instructor for every 5 to 6 people so that we can have many different situations being handled at the very same time. And we like to have a very open communicative system, meaning that if you're dealing with us and you're having problems with something and you think that maybe this is beyond you or it's too weak, it's too feeble, then we will adjust it for you particularly because of your size, maybe because you're a very large person or a very small person that you find you don't have the physical strength for what you think you're trying to do. So we give you other parameters. For us, it's much like the smorgasbord buffet approach. We'll have many things that will be offered. And because it's a brief period of time, sometimes a workshop in an afternoon, sometimes a full weekend, maybe 2 days or so, but there will be way more information than you could possibly be able to ingest and carry with you into the future as a total package. You'll find things that really resonate with you in particular. And that will vary from person to person, particularly when we have an open attendee approach. We need multiple people. We need to have flexibility so that we can take an individual and say, okay, for you, here's a way you can do this. You have a bad knee, a bad back, or you have maybe an advantage that you could do something with. And maybe it's your martial advantage, it's your size, your physical advantage, your flexibility. All of those can be turned into ways to enhance what you're doing. And we want you to communicate with us on this. So we have, again, a very open approach. If you have any time, there's a question, a concern, just get our attention. And for whatever reason, I didn't understand this. This doesn't make sense to me. I don't feel this is working for me. Okay, let's look at it and work particularly with you in finding a way to be successful with this particular technique or some other aspect of control that is in that smorgasbord module pantheon of options that would be more appropriate for you under these conditions.
Hanshi, I have to admit, I really like when you come to teach the course. Part of it, just because of the fact that I don't have to teach as much, I'll just throw that out there. but at the same time, I guess there's also that selfish element that I have that I get to spend more time with you. So I'm really looking forward to this course, and thank you so much for spending this time.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be in your company, Scott-san, and we'll hopefully look forward to a great training time in February.
This has been a Capsule Broadcasting production. I haven't made a New Year's resolution, but I think it's going to be to focus on martial arts. According to Hanshi, my dream of becoming a professional musician isn't happening.